Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. All right. Today's title is going to sound a little bit corny, a little bit self-helpy, but, you should just know you're not sitting in Barnes & Noble next to a guy in capri pants. Taking charge. Taking charge of your life, taking charge of everything around you, being the boss, becoming the boss on any level is an art. And typically the situation is that until you've done it, you don't think you can. And the people who think they can are probably the least suited to be so. If they've never done it, and they're just charging in. So this episode is going to be split. It's going to be split from a self mechanism of taking charge of your life and going and getting what you want in life. But it's also going to be becoming the authority figure within whatever paradigm you're in, being a parent, being the business manager, director, VP, senior VP, CEO, and knowing how to do that. But the very first half hour or so, I'm going to talk about you being perhaps stuck in a rut. It could be a fine rut. It could be okay. You actually don't mind your life, but you just have this gnawing little thing over there in your ear, little Tony talking to you in your ear, just telling you there's something else that you really want to do. And there's a transformation between wanting something and going and getting it. Huge transformation. It actually doesn't have to be necessarily a big bunch of steps to take place. It's just that once you make that switch, it feels amazing. Now again, what's the theme of this show? The theme of this show is to talk about things we don't talk about. And I'll tell you what, in my lifetime, even working for some of the greatest bosses on planet Earth, there was never really a point where we sat down and the boss said, this is how I do what I do. You had to watch and look and learn, and then you had to go out and do trial and error. You had to pray to God you had enough empathy to manage other people when you had to make it an external act of taking control. Let's talk about the self first, right? Now, I've talked about all kinds of things on this show where the inference is get off your ass and go do what you want to do. And here's how you do it. Here's how you find your soul. Here's how you find what is on the outside of the world that matches the alignment of what's on the inside of your soul. But the beautiful one about this one is this is a clean slate. This entire conversation is based on walking into a kitchen that is like some industrial kitchen, like a Gordon Ramsay kitchen. Everything you'd ever need is in there, and it's clean and it's beautiful. And it's like, oh, geez, what do you want to make? We start out with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and then we get to the baked Alaskan. But let's look at the psychological rut that we can get into. Habits can be good when it's something that needs to occur every single day as a part of your strategic existence. Bathing, eating, drinking, right? Bad habits, obviously, compound over time bad things into your body. If you ate a little bit of the wrong food every single day, maybe you'd be okay, but maybe you wouldn't. Maybe if you drank aspartame every single day, a little bit, builds up methyl ester, formaldehyde in the body. Not good. It toxifies you. So the habits that we have will either be benign, just you got to have these things, or they'll be good for you, exercising and reading, or they may just be fully recreational, and then we sort of calculate our little danger zone off to the right? It's one of those places where I know this is bad for me, but I don't do it that often, And that's sort of a good state. I'm going to fully bless what we do wrong as long as it's in moderation, and I would say 2 parts good, 1 part naughty. But you'll know you have friends, and maybe yourself too, where sometimes that 1/3 cheat starts to become more like 40% and then more like 50%, and hell, it could even get up to almost all of you or all of them. And obviously when it starts taking over your being, it starts consuming who you are, not only physically but mentally. One of the most well, I'll just tell you this, I'm not a big fan of obesity. And it's not really as much a visual thing, although my system does have sort of a rejection of really morbidly obese people. But if someone has a few pounds, I really don't, I don't personally judge them. As long as they're good people, I don't care, right? But the reason why obesity bothers me is, one, because I got, probably 25 pounds over what I am now at one point, and I realized that my entire body was shutting down. I could fall asleep sitting on a sofa, sitting straight up. I began snoring for the very first time in my life. Because I was gaining weight on the outside, pushing on everything that makes me breathe, and I was gaining weight a little bit on the inside. And it was causing issues. The amount of obese people that tell me they have, sleep snoring machines, it's crazy. They have big pop bellies usually. And they're complaining about it, and they don't know how to get rid of the machine. I'm looking at them going, get rid of the 60 to 70 pound medicine ball right in front of your face, and then your life will get a lot better. But that brings me to the second part, is that even if you're willing to accept the weight, it's going to affect your body physically. And I have not found anyone who is happy in life with whatever size they are, and they are mentally okay with it completely internally, in that, they feel like they can't run anymore. They can't sit up straight and pay attention. They do snore, which can affect their relationships. There's just a lot of factors to obesity that's very interesting. And I'm just picking that one because we have to start off on some example here where something has kind of crawled up our butt. Something just evolved over time. When you were younger, you could eat XYZ PDQ and you never gained a pound, and you actually stayed true. You were a good person, and you're just like, I don't know if there's any moral judgment here, but you were just consistent and you ate XYZ PDQ, and now you're gaining weight somehow. The fabled metabolism. But now think about it. If you are young and you eat XYZ PDQ and it just burns off, and then you get into your mid to late 30s, and then you're starting to put the pounds on. You're gaining like a pound every single year that you never shake off. And from 30 to 40, you gain 10 pounds. You could barely see it, right? What I need you to know is that in my experience, weight gain has been a very exponential thing. The first 10 pounds are almost impossible to put on. And then 11 through 190,000 is very easy. It becomes exponentially like this curve. Like your body almost says, oh, we're supposed to gain weight? Oh, okay. And then it just goes crazy, right? But the most damaging effect of any bad habit is when it starts to affect your brain and your self-perception. It could be that you're, again, very happy in life and you're 400 pounds. But in the end, you do have to sit on a toilet and take a crap at some point. You do have to crawl into a car and pry yourself out of a car. And when you do catch the glance of society, there's not that overwhelming approval for you anymore like it used to be. Because people are they may think you're handsome if you could lose all that weight, but they look at you and they go, oh my God, what's wrong with that person? And you internally feel fine. And so you have to take charge. You have to make a switch. Now the problem is there's a catch-22 in most of these scenarios that continue to plague us. Any situation that you could bring up in the middle of this conversation, which is like, I used to be this way, but then I became that way. If it's not hard to switch out of it, it's of no concern to us whatsoever. Before I finish up on the guy trying to lose a pound or two, let me show you the contrast between that guy's scenario and something that's more mental. And when you have a job and you decide you don't like it anymore, you're fine. It pays the bills. Maybe you don't like your boss. You don't like maybe the boss is okay, but the boss is going to retire soon. You don't like his or her replacement. And employees are kind of jerk-offs, and you're pretty sure you're not an asshole. And you think about getting another job. And some of you will think about getting another job and you'll be extremely excited about the prospect. You have confidence that you can find another job. It's a heartwarming experience. And that would probably be about 5 to 10% of all the candidates that would be in the situation I just described. 90 to 95% of everyone else having these exact feelings are terrified. They're utterly and completely terrified that there are no employers out there that would be interested in them, that they can't conceive of what the job would be. Because they can't conceive of what the job would be, it sort of doesn't exist in their brain. And so the prospect of change starts to feel like a bottomless void, a pit, an abyss of demise. And then what happens? You start stressing. And you start over-worrying about the job that you have. Oh my God, this is the only thing I have. Oh my God, but I think it's really bad. And you'll start worrying about things that don't exist. I've seen this happen so many times. And I've had this anxiety at least half a dozen times before I really started hitting my stride professionally. And it's that despair which becomes a barrier, which is why this episode has to exist. If the barrier never happened, then we would change fluidly and dynamically every single day of our lives. Society would be overwhelmingly rearranging, and everyone would probably find the peg they want to be in, you know? But now let's go back to our guy that's trying to lose a pound. Well, what does the guy need to do? Probably a couple things, but the most important thing would be to adjust his diet. That's it. It's a less is more situation. But the problem is the body's got an addiction, most likely, a habit. The stomach has probably been stretched completely out, such that the amount of stuff he's got to put in that stomach cavity to satiate the walls of his stomach so it doesn't growl and doesn't make him feel bad, it's a lot more. He's got to stop eating for quite a while and reduce slowly over time to shrink that stomach so that he can be full a lot quicker. He's got to eat for fullness, not eat for his opinion of food. But now, what if the guy had to do it completely by himself? He doesn't have a friend like me at all. He's just sitting there. Well, I guarantee when you're overweight, you feel tired. I don't care. If you don't feel tired, then imagine this. If you lost the weight, and again, everyone's got different weight things, but if you lost the weight that's on top of you, your energy level will be exponentially, or proportionally, I should say, greater. You know, if you weigh 60 pounds more than you're supposed to, 60% more than you're supposed to weigh, which would be pretty obese, then you have at least 60% more energy just waiting. Every single pound that falls off your body, you feel better. And again, you have to look at the redwood tree analogy, the hatchet chopping down a redwood tree. Every little day that you eat a little bit less, even though you can't notice the difference, makes difference. And eventually the tree will fall. Eventually you will reach your ideal weight. Eventually you'll realize that taking a shit is a lot easier. Keeping it real on Deep Thoughts. I think the number one obstacle to taking charge is your energy level. That's the toughest one. That's the toughest thing. You're sitting there and you're thinking, God, I need to work out. I need to go to the gym. I need to do whatever, read a book. And the hardest thing is when you have the idea just before bed or very late in the evening and you're like, shit, I can't do it right now. I guess the only place I can do it is tomorrow. And then for some weird reason, without trying to sabotage yourself, you wake up the next day and all the routines of making coffee, getting kids ready, going to work, showering, whatever you got to do, hopefully in a better order than that, you don't think about it. It's gone. The idea's gone out of your mind because you didn't write it down and put it in front of you. Right now in my life, I have a buddy of mine who is just cranking out at the gym. He just lives a few miles north of me, one of my best friends in the whole world, and I continually have forgotten to ask him during the day when he works out so we can sync up schedules and I'll go work out with him. It's just me doing poor planning. What are some of the areas where taking charge really occur in the self? I will always tell you that physical fitness is one of the most important things on planet Earth, because with physical fitness, you essentially have yourself a clean temple. Everything you put inside your mind, right, which is, again, in this show, it's your body and your soul / spirit working together to create one instance of consciousness. What's on your mind right now is how they say it, right? Well, that concept is held within the cavity of your temple. And so as you would clean your home, you would clean your temple, your body. Now, it's not a matter of judging anyone for being clean or being dirty, but it goes down to the psychological, cognitive level of your brain is an inquisitive being. It really is. And it likes to look at everything. It really does. And so a cluttered room will entertain your brain and take away a lot of cycles from a clean room. So if you have that Moulin Rouge sort of Ralph Bakshi sketch shop, Ebi Works looking Tesla joint, if you get all those references, I'll be very impressed. But then you will be utterly entertained and distracted away from your thought, the one that you're supposed to have, the new one. Now, maybe, and in the case of a creative project, you surround yourself with the imagery that fuels the unified story, and then that's good. When they wrote the movie Tron, they created a room that for 5 years, every sketch that someone did that looked like the movie Tron, this is 1982 Tron, from 75 to 80, they made a little room, and everyone walked in there and put their new sketch up on the wall at this animation studio, Lisberger Animation Studios, and eventually one of the wives wrote down everything that they had said on a story level of what this art could be, and when they finally got the idea to actually write a screenplay, she came up with this 22-page white notebook and said, here's everything you guys have ever said, and boom, it happened. So I'm not demonizing mess and clutter. But when you're trying to change your paradigm, change the way that you think, and you surround yourself with anything that's just a distraction, it's going to hobble your ability to complete your thought. And you cannot go get things if you cannot conceive of them, right? And this might sound really strange from someone on YouTube that you don't know, that's never met you, but you got to know this. I want you personally to get everything that you want in life, provided you're a good person, right? I don't want you to kill everybody. But I want you to get your personal goals. And I know of several of you who have taken charge and done it since I met them as a result of the other show and this show. And it is so inspiring. It is so amazing because you're never too old to learn. You're never too old to pick it up and go for it. And I mean ever too old. I got friends that are 83 that design futuristic movies, 72 and running their own businesses. I mean, brand new businesses. There's no end to it. The end to it, it's when you stop perceiving that you can continually move forward. And it's like, you might say, okay, what if somebody's injured? Well, can they use their eyes to move a cursor on a screen like hawking? Write a book, man. Do something. You could probably even program like that. I will continue going no matter what. But taking charge is a very liberating experience as well. And we're not told that often. Taking that chance is huge. And again, it doesn't have to be a massive thing. Again, you could say, I just need to read more. I need to spend more time with my family. Whatever. It could be anything that you need to simply change in your life. But you got to get over that hump. Now, if we borrow a little bit from Tony Robbins, the idea is, and this is not his invention by any means, but the idea is to say, envision what your life will be like if you make this change that we're talking about. And then you have to take steps. I did a whole episode on law of attraction, and again, I'll repeat this. People got, concerned that I was saying that you don't have to do anything, that you just sit there and envision it and all of a sudden it comes to you. I don't think so, But while you're taking steps, you need opportunities to sort of bring the rocks up underneath your feet. And I believe law of attraction is almost like using the Force in Star Wars. You're taking little cobblestones and they keep, they're kind of laying in a big giant pile, and you need to walk across a cliff to the other side of some canyon, some cavern, some crevasse. And here come the stones underneath your feet. The law of attraction is sort of building the opportunity in your future. to solidify your action into reality, right? Everyone likes new stuff. Almost every species of person loves new stuff. Like things that they can buy and bring home to their house, especially a hoarder. Hoarders are addicted to that pleasure of a new thing, the transaction of purchasing it. As soon as it's home, they don't really care about it. People who aren't hoarders vary between that exact behavior and behavior of obsessing on what they brought home. It's a big deal, right? Well, now, why does a new thing always have to be a tangible? Why does it have to be an object that you can hold? Why can't it be a concept in your mind? Let me give you my experiences so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. This house right here. I moved here 2003. By 2005, I had intellectually, with a partner of mine, started a game company. We'd been in the game business for a long time, or I'd been in it for a really long time. And we started a game company, and all we did was we used our computers in a discipline that made video games in this house. And he did it at his place up in Van Nuys. So the only thing that really exists was that we formed a corporation with the state of California. And then I would sit in this house and do programming on games and do art and all that kind of stuff. And up there he would do his, and our clients were in Los Angeles here. And that's the only thing that made it what it was. 1 year later, we, through some negotiations of mine, I was able to acquire a pretty large project and made a partner out of a person that actually had the project. He couldn't do the project without us, and we obviously could have used the money. It was a great project. And then we got an office in Los Angeles, and we got an office in Costa Mesa down here. Then all of a sudden we had employees. So I had to do interviews. We're paying tons of money every month to interview folks, to bring them in and do the thing. Now, I had just run a gigantic department at EA, but EA was already established. EA was already making billions of dollars every year. I had HR departments and recruiting agencies and attorneys and all kinds of and pre-existing employees that were already vetted. I didn't have to explain anything to. In fact, they had explained things to me. But when I did it on my own, I had to get payroll, health benefits, all these things all set up. Huge. And then at one point, we had about 30 employees between the two offices. And I came to work every day in an office that I rented that we're now paying for 100% with the income coming into the company. And everyone's paid extremely well. And we're making name brand products. We have huge clients. Huge freaking clients. Our code is operating every single day and will for probably the next 20 years. Unless there's a huge paradigm shift and a lot of these companies rewrite everything. But, 60 million people a month would run one of our applications. One of the first ones that we ever deployed. Pretty cool, right? And that stuff's still running to this day. But there is an example of taking charge. And instead of it being a VCR, a television, VCRs, what am I talking about? Blu-ray player, television, computer, toy. It was an intellectual creation, which was a company that bettered tons of people's lives. We had a crew of 50 in Peru that we were making games with. These people have objects in their houses and vacations that they took based on two guys in Los Angeles coming up with an idea. I sent all my folks to Costa Rica on a 1-week trip. That event now is in their brain for the rest of their life because of this other intellectual idea and two dudes taking charge. I know you feel me, but I'm driving that home because that's you. That's exactly you. You have an idea, and it doesn't have to be a bunch of employees that you change. It's you. It's your kids. It's your spouse. And it's the most exhilarating thing you will ever experience in your life. And it doesn't matter if eventually you have to close your doors or it doesn't work completely. You will learn so much from every single attempt, just like Edison and his light bulb story. That every time you go back to the trough to try again, back to the edge of the cliff to leap off with your squirrel suit, You're going to be that much more confident and that much more fearless about smacking into the ground. Because you know this is just an intellectual failure. Who cares, right? I got the whole episode about picking yourself back up. We're going to stick on track with taking charge in this one. Because in this episode, there's no concept of really worrying about failure. It's just, failure is just a completely overdone concept. Now, there's also a great analogy of not putting your eggs all in one basket. I don't know. It depends on how much time you have as to whether or not that analogy really applies to you. The sort of all eggs in one basket sort of scenario would be if it is something that can never occur again, even in theme. What do I mean by that? Well, this event's going to make you feel a certain way. It's going to, like let's say you invent something. And inventors always get bent out of shape if someone steals their invention. And obviously that's a horrific thing that happens sometimes. But the person who's stealing cannot invent something new. They can't. Luckily with the internet, it's pretty easy to prove that you're the one that actually invented it. Just make sure you tell a few folks. But the person who's inventing stuff can continue making new objects and new things and new theories. Now sometimes they're really good, I understand. What I like to do is diversify. I have my main thing, my main thrust that I'm trying to put the majority of my energy into, and that would be the closest thing that I have to an eggs in one basket sort of thing. But, it varies between, say, personally, I'm going to tell you that it varies every single day. Let's say you had 3 projects going. There's one primary and 2 secondaries. You're trying to start a new business with a family member or whatever by yourself, and it is the thing that's draining all your money. It's keeping you from having a full-time job because you're building a new company. So it's a high-risk situation. It needs all your devotion when it needs your devotion. Now, sometimes you'll go full bore 100% for a month straight, and other times you're waiting for certain feedback from dependencies before you can move forward. You try to do everything you can while you're waiting, but there does come a time when you get a little bit of time back and there's nothing you can do but wait for the phone call to ring or an email to come in. And then you have this remaining time. So anytime you get the other time, you start working on your other 2 projects. It was only 2. Doesn't matter. It could be 8. Be careful though. Now the only difference is the following. If you need money as a result of your project's success, to have a secondary project or more, they need to be as equally committed to making money as the one that you're actually putting all your eggs into. Because in that scenario, you only have one that's actually going to pay the bills and the other one's a fantasy. And I will tell you this, I have very close friends of mine all the time who come up with these other ideas of what they want to do for a living and they have no revenue attached to them at all. Very dangerous. So let's not get all freaked out. Let's just plan properly, right? I think it's healthy to have something on the side because you're going to need something that's equally interesting when you get utterly exhausted of your primary thing. Now, it's up to you whether or not the thing you're trying to take charge and push forth is just all-encompassing, all-intoxicating. Because those moments happen. You just cannot stop doing it. Here is my advice to you, having done every type of project on planet Earth you could think of, right? Relating to art, technology, etc., etc. There's this weird pattern that happens, at least with me, and I've done a really good job sort of mitigating it out of my life, but if this is happening to you, be aware that this happens, and once you're aware, you can make sure it never really bothers you anymore. Let's say you're doing something you've never done before, which is probably 50% of all the projects I've ever done, especially when you're inventing something from scratch. You have something you've never done before. You're architecting something. You think you can make all the wires connect and so forth. And what I'll end up doing, or at least what I used to do, is I would psych myself out that I didn't think I could ever do something. It's sort of almost like a reverse psychology bait and switch technique on myself to say, I bet you can't do that. I bet you can't. And that challenge would make me go do it. The problem with that technique, even though it has a little bit of effectiveness. The problem with it is that once I accomplish what I've been baiting myself that I can't accomplish, I have this massive reward feeling that shouldn't actually exist yet. I've only completed a milestone in a list of perhaps infinite milestones to get to the end goal, right? I have no idea how many milestones it's going to take to finish this thing. And so I am rewarding myself too much. And I walk away from the project and I feel so relieved. Maybe I even go to bed. I work up until 4 o'clock in the morning, I go to bed. The problem is when I wake up, I still carry around that huge victory. And it intimidates me from it doesn't intimidate me, but it satiates me from going back into the project because I start getting cocky. All the rest of the stuff I could kill because that was the hardest thing and I got that done. And a day will go by, 2 days will go by. The alternate projects start to take precedence and I start to relax and have fun. Maybe even go out and just do nothing. And the problem is the project hasn't moved 1 millimeter since I patted myself on the back so hard. So now I fight any urge to do that, to reward myself. No more games. This is, I lean back on my hatchet idea. Hatchet chopping down a redwood tree. And in case you're asking, yeah, I do see that in my brain. I see it in my brain. I think of chopping a big redwood. I don't want to chop a redwood tree down. I think they're gorgeous. They should stay where they are and fall naturally. But it's sort of that analogy in my brain. So be aware of that little trick. But now here's the thing. What if you spent months and months and perhaps years and decades thinking that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing or that you need to add to your life something else or any combination thereof? And then you start doing it. You start realizing, yeah, I'm just going to do it. At whatever cost, I'm going to do it. And you start doing it, and you start feeling amazing immediately. You're like, oh my God. Today, I actually took one step in the direction that I needed to take, whether it be eating less, exercising, writing that book, whatever the hell it is, right? You took a couple little minuscule steps. You hit took a little chunk, a couple little niches out of the tree. Believe me. What'll start happening is this momentum inside your mind will start to occur. And as I said in my creative episodes, I believe wholeheartedly that the universe is a very spiritual object, and it is sitting there waiting for you to get off your ass and go make a change. It's waiting for you to take charge of your life. And it can't do much more than wait for you to take that first step. But once you take the first step, the universe pops out of nowhere and starts to look at you. Starts to say, okay, she's doing it. He's okay. They are working on their things. All right, well, let's see here. Do we think they're taking this seriously? If so, let's give them one morsel of energy, power, epiphany to get to the next level. And let's just see how they handle it. We're going to make a tiny little angel investment in the consciousness of this person. Maybe they need opportunity, so we'll put a little tiny opportunity out there. We'll just see how they do. The system's designed to make sure that you have to work for it. Because again, playing life in a God mode is bullshit. And then you come back the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and you start to show you're serious. Even at the very beginning, you're like, I don't have any clue of how I'm going to organize my thoughts, my deeds, all these things. I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm going to keep pushing. And believe me, the universe is right there. Almost as if you've got like a spiritual crew of employees that are working absolutely for you. Almost like just pure mentors or people that are investors who will give you opportunities. It's really interesting. Don't knock it till you try it is the summary of that section. I recently, if those of you haven't seen the, if there are any of you, that haven't seen the Techno Viking, I think his name is Paul George. He is a year 2000 rave that's being filmed in some foreign country, this amazing track, and he's very famous for kind of keeping the crowd in check, and he's just ripped. He's like Thor, you know. He's like a Viking warrior. And he walks down, he's dancing and doing all this crazy stuff. He just got super famous because he was just, pure alpha male wiring, right? Well, I was clicking through, showing a buddy of mine, we're smoking cigars, and we're like, yeah, have you ever heard this? Because I made the reference to him, and I said, well, you haven't seen it? Well, you should go see it. So we're watching it, and off to the side was this video of Paul George. I'm pretty sure that's his name. And there he is, 16 years later, 15 years later, and he is even more monstrous. Looks older now, of course, but he just looks massive, and he's working out in a gym. I mean, literally, his body is, it doesn't look like he has any steroids, but maybe he does. I don't think he does. And this was a video where he didn't talk or anything, but the narration, even if it's not Paul George, it looks, go look up Paul George, and you'll see this guy working out. But in his video at the very end, he says, these credits sort of come up, these cheesy ass, built-in credits that we all use on in our favorite video product. And it just said something like this. It goes, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, you can always reach your goals. He's talking about working out, but he's just talking about generically. He goes, it just takes a lot longer than you think. Or it takes longer than you think. Didn't say a lot longer. It takes longer than you think. And I read that and I was like, that's a beautiful way of saying the way it really works. Now, if you go after what you want, you take charge, and it happens it happens as you expected in the timetables that you thought it would take. You're one lucky devil. And more power to you, man. Keep going, keep going. Use that. It's almost like a baton race, right? There's 4 people that have to run a baton race, and you keep handing it off until the 880's done, right? And that's someone ran really fast. And so you know that all 4 groups of folks all 4 people that run on your team have to run fast, otherwise you lose. By the way, I'm going to put a plug in for Aussie Man Reviews. Oh my God, if you guys haven't seen this guy, just look up Aussie Man Reviews and then look at the baton race that he narrates. It's a women's track team, I believe, in Ireland. And it is, quite frankly, one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen in my life. And it's so indicative of the way life works. And I won't say anything else, but it is right. Everything about that video, metaphorically, is what we're talking about here. But let's switch to the external take charge, a very literal interpretation. Because I'm losing my light here, you're about to take charge at work, or you would like to take charge at work. There's 2 ways to take charge at work. There's going to be a way that you simply take more responsibility, and you will, there's no change to your report structure. You don't have you don't have employees underneath you, all that kind of stuff. Your boss is going to still be your boss. But you feel underutilized, just like in the movie Office Space, right? There's an old famous saying that a lot of you have heard: authority is not given, authority is taken. And it is true. It is 100% true. You have to go on your own and get the skill sets to do what you want to do before you're given it by someone else in almost every scenario. And that's what you have to do. You have to haul ass. My advice, if you want to be, here's the thing. I gotta finish up the singular thought here. If you're simply wanting more responsibility at your job, or you just want more respect, then you need to become the very, very best at what you do. And let me give you a silly analogy that illustrates it absolutely perfectly. Have any of you seen these funny videos online where they film people in food services? Sometimes it's retail, but it'll be like someone who, it's usually like the funny ones are the ones that are filmed in foreign countries. The guy will be like pouring coffee, he'll be making pizzas, he'll be making bread, and their bodies become machines, right? They can do something super duper fast. Some of them turn into artsy things where they mix up the coffee by pouring it in big gigantic 3-foot streams. They've got the centripetal force going perfectly to get the coffee in the mug, and they're just mixing it up by pouring it back and forth. Some guys will pick up fish and haul them, throw them completely across the room. Some guys are taking pizza dough and throwing it behind their back and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then they get even in their decorative way of doing what they do, they get it done faster and more efficient than people who go real slow, right? Well, I mentioned that Well, they're being filmed because they are extraordinary at what they've done or what they do. Somehow they practiced the whole thing of the bartenders that throw around all the bottles and that kind of stuff. Well, those guys or girls become odysseys at the venues, and they become the reason why people come back to that venue, because they had that little trick. Now, all those tricks wear out over time, you know. But I guarantee you get so good at what you do, and it's not only, like in those particular cases, these are more fanciful executions of things. But for those of you who've ever seen them take a 52-deck card feeder that's printing them and they put them in the deck of cards, there's another one that's like that. There's assembly line ones where they can roll cigars faster than anyone else. They can do things faster. That's bottom line money, and that's what you want to do at work, is find the shortest distance between two paths. Like that thing I just said in the other episode, which is it's better to take a shorter amount of time to do the job right than a longer amount of time to do the job wrong. If you are efficient, you will be the shortest distance between two paths. If you subscribe to shortcuts, you're probably bluffing yourself. So be careful with that one. Now, when I manage a department or a company, I am results driven. 100%. I don't really care when you come to work, and I don't really care when you go home, as long as the unit of work that I'm hiring you to do in a particular day gets done every single day. But until you can prove to your employer that that's exactly what's occurring. And again, your job isn't to do the bare minimum in most cases. If you're in a bare minimum attitude towards job, you have the wrong job. You should want to do your job all the time. And not to make someone else rich, but simply because it's part of your core. It's part of your core being, which is why working for yourself typically allows you to command your destiny. But just understand there's a lot of challenges for motivation when you work for yourself. You have to drag yourself up out of bed. There is absolutely nobody pulling you out of bed when you're sick. There's no motivation to do anything sometimes. It's just a natural process. But you want to impress. And I've got a whole episode in season 1 about how to get a job. If you're really dealing with any paradigm shifts in your jobs and the job that you do me a favor and go watch that episode. There are so many tricks of the trade in that episode. It is not just some basic view. None of my shit is a basic view, okay? For me, this show, when I do a self-help episode of any kind, this is the way I wish books were written. And there are a couple authors I have read over the years that just give it to you straight. I mean, they're cussing you out in the first page if you don't get your shit together. And I think that's the way we need it, man. You know, the life is not here to candy coat reality so that you can digest it, because life is raw, right? If you don't think life is raw, go watch a couple videos with how, you know, lions and cheetahs eat their prey in the jungle. Just watch that and tell me all about how life works. I shouldn't say jungle, but the desert. So at some point you need someone to respect you, to love you, and to give it to you the way you need to hear it, period. Right? I love my fellow man. We're in this shit together, man. How are we going to rebuild the bottom of the pyramid if we can't enjoy life? And we got to. If you have children, you're responsible for teaching this stuff. So you got to have some practice and some successes under your belt before you're going to be able to teach your kids. I have friends that have problems, personal problems with themselves that are pretty drastic and pretty major. And when they talk to me, they just live in their problems. They just keep saying, well, I've got this problem, and it's just part of me, and it's just my problem. You know what the real rebuttal is to that? Well, knock it off. If your kid came to you with your problem, how would you solve the problem? Would you tell your child, well, you're just going to be broken your whole life. This is what mommy does, and mommy does this, and daddy does this. We just stay broken constantly. We don't nut up and own life. We don't take charge of anything. We just sit there and become a victim of reality and da-da-da. Fuck that. Be an adult. Nut up. Get out of your childhood. Own that shit. It's more fun to push through the barrier of all this crap, man. Think about all these people that have been held captive by some asshole. And they finally break free and they want to live life. Well, you don't have a captor in most cases. Most people just have weird little anomalies about themselves that they wrote off. They gave it a blank check. They gave the disease, the mental disease, the physical disease, a blank check. Turn your diseases, turn your issues into enemies and destroy them. That has to be the fundamental before you can ever take charge, right? Now, let's say you want to be a boss, because you've had some good bosses and you've had some shitty bosses. In my life, I've had the most amazing run of great bosses, shitty bosses, great bosses, shitty bosses. And then after a while, I've just had nothing but great bosses. And then I became one. And I think I've been a pretty awesome boss. Now, some people are predisposed to being authority figures because they understand what it means. When you are in charge of human beings, it's very similar to being a parent. And what's interesting is the folks that I know that have been fantastic managers are folks that were either predisposed to be parents or they were parents. Because they look at every employee like a child that they're responsible for. And I don't mean that in any belittling way. I just mean that from a sensitivity, an empathetic wave. You have to feel your employees as if they were the closest relatives on planet Earth. And what's really strange, I'm just going to give you this analogy, so perhaps those of you who are parents understand what I'm talking about immediately, but those of you who aren't parents yet, you'll get this. If you've ever, prior to being a parent, looked at another person's children or child, and they're kind of cute, but overall you have some weird rejection. You're like, it's a kid, get away from me, kid, you're bothering me, right? Especially the people that think they don't want children because they have that feeling around children all the time. Now, that could be a sign from God that you shouldn't have any kids. But I will tell you, there's something that transforms you. And I said this for the last 21 years of my life. I didn't really care about other people's kids that much until I had one of my own. And once you see your genetics looking back at you, boys, just a soul changer. I don't know what it is, and I couldn't possibly fathom how to explain it to you. That just merely observing this innocent, vulnerable creature that is your baby looking back at you, and you can start seeing your own face. You can see mommy's face, and hopefully you dig mommy enough that it's a good thing. But now there was a transformation with me. The second I could care about my own child is the second I saw, for most kids, that exact same feeling. I say most because there are some kids that I think that have worked overtime to make me hate them. But those are kids in public with no education on how to behave in public, right? Because they have bad parents. You still know it's not the kid's fault. It's the parents' fault. I just ate at a restaurant last night at 10:30, and there's babies in the building crying. I'm like, what the fuck are these kids doing out of bed? Jesus, some of these parents, man. But when you start having employees, you need some form of that. You need some empathetic bone. They're not here to serve you, as much as that's what their technical responsibility is on paper. The best way to think about your department is to think about it as a family. And what happens in a family? When you have a friend who's an asshole and he just can't stop being an asshole, well, you're more apt to get rid of that person out of your circle of life. But when a family member starts acting bad, you go through at least several iterations of trying to give them another chance and another chance, because it's sort of vicariously on a deep subconscious level. It's your genetic pool. You're thinking, geez, if I can't fix this guy or get him to his or her, plateau of calmness, then maybe I have the same psychosis. I think I don't really have that problem, but I know people who do. And so there's this blank check you give family members. Well, when you have an employee, you're going to be doing that sort of thing. This is your family. And everyone's equal on a different level. No one's equal in the same way in most cases. And you're going to have to nurture them. They're going to have predispositions. Some person's going to be a workaholic. Other person's going to seem like they're lazy. Hopefully their output is acceptable. Some people are going to be extremely sensitive. Some people are going to be hard as a rock. Some people are going to be very monotone and seem like they don't have any emotion, but they seem to crank out the work. And other people want to sit and talk and talk and talk because they're social. You have to find a way to harvest all of their strengths to a common goal within either your company or the department that you're managing within someone else's company. If you're the CEO, the job simply gets more massive, and you're going to have to be a person who can see everything in the peripheral vision of your mind, right? I'll give you some examples. I had I think I mentioned this a long time ago, but I'm going to say a dirty word, so it's going to be a dirty word, but this is what my employee said to me in the middle of the department in front of a lot of other people. So if this is shocking to you, it was shocking to me too. And we had to tell her to immediately be quiet because she had committed a faux pas that could have gotten her fired instantaneously. Had a single person raise their hand and said, "I don't like that." But we had, I forgot how we were talking, but we had used, maybe it was even me, I'm not quite sure. Someone used the word chick to reference a woman. And I think it was dude and chick. We're going back and forth, back and forth. We're talking about who would like some of the properties we're making in this web department. And she turns and she's not from America, but she had been in America for quite a while. And she was Japanese. And just knowing the culture a lot better nowadays, I'm really shocked that she had such a violent reaction to it. But she was kind of being fun, and she was trying to educate us that she doesn't like that word. She thinks that's a belittling word for women. And I actually do, in certain contexts, know what she's talking about for sure. I don't believe we were using it in that way, but maybe we were. But maybe she just has an aversion to the word for very good reasons that we don't understand. That's fine. I accept her opinion 100%. But she said, I can't believe you're using that word. It's just like if I use the word cock. And I was like, and everybody was like, whoa, so-and-so, you need to calm down, stop saying that. That is a completely different word. I can say chick on television, all right? You would be arrested by the FAA, right? Or sorry, the FCC, excuse me. But that's how it works. It's different. Now, when you take charge in a departmental manner, there's a couple scenarios that you're going to run into. The rarest one is that you're building a department from scratch. That's usually if you're building your own company or you're in a startup. At that point, there's a beautiful aid that comes to the rescue, and it's called the Mother Goose or the Father Goose imprinting. When you hire folks, and you want to, again, it's part of the take charge thing, they know you as the boss. When you take charge, you have to be very careful how much you befriend your employees, because a lot of people will take advantage of you. If they feel like you're a pushover, you're in for a big ride. If you're working for someone else and you're a pushover, you'll get fired and they'll stay. If you're running your own company, you're probably going to lose your company to a lack of efficiency, right? So you need to maintain a bit of a stoic distance from your employees. Be cool, but let that be cool moment be special to them. Can you believe the boss said that? Oh my gosh. The boss got up in karaoke. That was amazing, right? But that's a rare one. Building a department is more rare than inheriting a department. Now, I've had both inheriting employees that were friends of mine, and they became my employees within a company. We had personal relationships, so it was a little awkward at first that I was going to be in charge of them. My advice in all scenarios of acquisition, where you're taking over a department, is to move very, very slow. Let them warm up to you. If it's a group of your close friends, be very slow. Be a very above board. You might even say, well, this might get a little strange. I don't want it to get strange. Obviously, we know what we got to do. What I'll do is I'll kind of track, what our tasks are. In my case, my first department was 2 people, and I was the third guy. And I was still an engineer. I was the lead engineer of a group of 3 guys. And so I said, I'll take all the hard parts. You take these 2 secondary parts, and therefore the burden will be mostly on me to get this thing done and architected. And we had a great time. Never had any problems. I personally never had any problems ever taking over a department. When I finally moved within Electronic Arts bowels from being sort of a contributor, a tester, and sort of a associate producer of sorts, into taking over 6 developers, which soon went to 24, which soon went to 50, which went to 55, just to give you sort of the growth pattern of what was going on at that point. These were 6 guys I didn't know. They took me to lunch, and they sort of busted my balls during lunch, and it was great. They said, well, if you're going to be our boss, you need to tell us a lot about how you think and how you work. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? What do you do about our careers? Do you care about our careers? Are you going to help us out? And it was perfect. I learned more from them during that 9-hour interview than I probably learned in any 9 hours after that being the manager. Of course, month after month after month, I learned a ton, but I moved slow. And everything I did for them was to, as I've noted in a couple of things, this is for you to take charge. These are your schematics to take charge. And you sit down your employees that you don't know, that have been working at this company a lot longer than you have, even if it's a day. And you ask them that question I always repeat, which is you ask them, what was the best day you've ever had here? What's the most efficient project you've ever had where everything went right? And you write all that down. And then you ask them the second question. You go, well, here's what I do. If I think the best day answer is comprehensive and something I can just immediately put in place, I don't go to the second question. But if it's sort of meandering and they never really have had a great day, then we start talking about the worst day. Why are there problems? What should have taken place in your opinion? And you will find, 98% of the time, that these folks know exactly how things should work. And then you have to organize that methodology. See if the upper management will allow you to implement that methodology. Usually upper management is just waiting for someone to sort through the bullshit. And that's exactly what I did as I sorted through things. I created systems. I created forms. I got the client on the other side of the fence to go, this is what we've been waiting for 2 years. You've only been here 1 month, and this is perfect. It's a big deal. That could be you. Get to know your employees. If you have direct reports, you need to do a one-on-one every single week for half an hour to an hour. I would say monthly. You have monthly departmental meetings to make sure that the vision of what's supposed to take place is taking place. And here's the other big giant thing you need to do when you become a manager or of any kind, director, VP, whatever. If you've never done it before, this information is valuable to you. Trust me. And it doesn't matter what Ivy League education you have. Understanding human beings is something that doesn't come from college. It comes from being in the trenches. I have something I call above board management style, above board communication. The idea is if everyone in the room is thinking it, that's what you need to figure out a way to say. If it's something that's very tumultuous and has a lot of tension, then you need to practice before you come into work and actually say it. And that means in the car on the way to work. If you have a household where you're a single person, you can just rehearse, do it. If you're in good communication with your spouse or whatever, then you practice with them. But you come in and you tell everyone, okay, I know what everyone's thinking. If I'm correct, we're thinking all this. Would that be an accurate statement? And you wait for people to buy in. Am I missing anything? And you encourage them to talk about it. And then you go for it. Now, the problem is if you have a defective employee, and that's the big issue that everyone's thinking about, you can genericize the references such that it doesn't point out any one individual. Everyone will know who you're talking about. The person that you're talking about will know you're talking about them. But they will know that you're doing them a courtesy and not calling out their name. You're not even making mention that it's a single employee that has an issue. You're just talking about, we need to get here. It doesn't really matter who's dysfunctional at this point. The department needs to get synced into this particular avenue, this particular level of functionality. So let's all do that. Then when you have your one-on-one with the defective employee, be kind, be courteous, be constructive, but let them know, we got to step it up here. If you've ever dealt with a businessman who has succeeded a lot in life, they are more stern, they are more stoic with you, and they are more, what can I do for you? Or if they're calling you into their office, believe me, they have engineered the conversation before you've stepped in the room, and all they want are results. They want acknowledgement, and they want results. They want change, they want improvement. On an occasion, you're going to inoculate an award, right, for what you're doing, verbally. Just want to tell you you're doing a great job. If you're ever lucky enough to get that latter conversation, that doesn't mean slack off. That means go back and double down, do even better. Blowing away your boss is never a bad idea. Don't expect a single deed, and if you're a manager, don't do this. If your employee has a single deed, Try not to reward them too heavily financially. Set their expectations that that's not how you're going to be able to reward them, because eventually the company runs out of money. If an employee is responsible for a giant sum of money coming into the company that was not expected to come into the company, you can bonus them out, because you'll encourage that behavior. And hey, if they're constantly bringing in big deals, and that's why salesmen get all the commissions and support people get laid off half the time, because they're considered a cost center, even though they hold the integrity of the deal together. And once it's made, you can pass out checks. Be very careful. Sometimes it's just you get a day off. There's your money. It's in the form of PTO, personal time off. This episode is about taking control. I fear that the one thing that's fleeting away, like the sun in my video right here, is that the aggressive gene is sort of being weeded out of us. I know a lot of our folks like marijuana, or at least some of you. Some of you can smoke that stuff and stay really active, and I envy you. But I fear that it's not really making anyone active. It's making people super mellow. And maybe that makes them happy. And as long as you're happy in your mellowness and you can pay your bills, then hey, more power to you. Being happy is the goal, right? But for a lot of you that feel this inner struggle of something you want to have happen, but you can't seem to find the energy to do it, part of cleansing that temple is to detoxify yourself from everything. I smoke cigars on this show. And, I have to be honest with you. If you smoke cigars, it is a mellowing experience. I think it helps me with my train of thought when I'm creating these episodes. But it's not exactly like I'm going to go inside and typically, rail off 45 pages to a script. Maybe I will. But if it needs a lot of energy to take place, I typically delay my cigar to the end of the day after I've done what I need to do. Have my coffee and my tea, whatever, get a little caffeined up a little bit, and then just go for it. Understand that you're probably going to have to get your energy levels in your body up to take advantage of anything. I know you feel me. I'm losing my light. Gotta run. For those of you on podcasts, I'm sorry you're being sanctioned by the sun. The goal in this episode was to sort of give you level 1 of the things that need to take place for you to get what you want. The metaphysical understanding of what it means to take charge and the benefits to do so. The benefits if you do it. Remember, you're chopping down a redwood tree with a little tiny hatchet. It's going to seem fleeting for days and maybe months, but eventually that tree's coming down, and hopefully you got a good use for it if you're going to kill a redwood tree. Stay focused. I got an episode that'll probably be out already by the time this one comes out called Focus. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I will see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.